Thank you for that. So welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us on the session on transforming the way your employees engage with you. This session is 30 minutes long, and I'm joined in this session by Rashmi Miharitra, who will be doing the demonstration portion. But before we move on to that, I'd like to start talking a little bit more generally about employee engagement. To give you a bit of an idea who I am, my name is Lisa Ames, as you heard before, and I manage Cornerstone's Client Success Services for the Asia Pacific region. So let's make a start. Okay, so starting by looking at what the definition of employee engagement is, it's the level of an employee's psychological investment in their organisation. As far as different dimensions you can measure to understand your employees' engagement, there's three main ones that we recommend and use. One is satisfaction, so looking at how happy employees are with their current status as an employee, and that helps predict employee retention. There's also engagement, so how invested employees are in the role they're doing and doing that role well, so that helps to predict employee performance. And there's also commitment, so how much are they invested in the organisation as a whole and its success. So that helps to predict organisational citizenship behaviour and gives you an idea of employees that are likely to go above and beyond their job description. Okay, moving on, I'm going to have a look at the current status of engagement. So if we look at things from a global point of view, there's actually, generally speaking, 13% of employees who are engaged from a global basis. If you're wanting to look at Asia specifically, 28% of employees are engaged in the region, so better than the global average, however, still a lot of room for improvement. So the first statistic comes from a Gallup survey, and the second one is from a Tiny Pulse 2017 engagement survey, so a very recent statistic. That second survey I mentioned actually highlighted a couple of specific things. So one thing identified in Asia Pacific specifically was that there's really only half of employees can actually identify their organisation's vision, mission and values. And the other kind of big gap highlighted was in regards to Asia, and it was around communication. So feeling like you're getting appropriate communication through from the managers. It was only 40% of employees felt that they were actually getting that level of communication that they need to be engaged with their organisation. So I think the big question around that is this something you should worry about, or, you know, what's the point of looking around at engagement? So engagement actually has a direct impact in regards to the bottom line of organisations. It's one of the biggest competitive differentiators people have, and, you know, that's particularly important in this kind of shortage of the right talent and the importance of being able to retain employees. Generally speaking, engaged employees are more productive, they're happier in their job, and they're more loyal to the organisation. And an organisation that increases its employee engagement has about 59% less turnover. Profitability increases by just over 20%, and absenteeism reduces by just over 40%. So it does have a financial or a business impact, and that's why a lot more organisations are looking at it, and you see a lot more articles around on the topic of engagement than perhaps you would have seen 5 years ago. One thing that's becoming clear in a lot of the surveys and a lot of the articles published is that what's happening at the moment isn't working particularly well. So generally, looking at some global surveys, only 18% actually 18% don't actually measure employee engagement at all, so they don't have a measure of how well they're doing in that regard. 8% of organisations measure employee engagement on a monthly or more frequent basis, so that is a quite a small number that do it regularly or do pulse surveying. And then 4% believe that they're good at engaging the different generations in the workplace, such as millennials. So the numbers there are fairly low. So with the information that's coming out, Cornerstone thinks that there's a need to re-look at how people address employee engagement. And we've introduced a solution that helps you capture real-time continuous employee feedback to be able to analyse that feedback and take action, so put a plan in place. So the way we do that is by allowing you to capture continuous feedback, so not waiting till once a year in order to capture information, to be able to analyse that feedback and take action, so conducting a comprehensive analysis and to really understand the information that your employees give you, to give you insights to identify and understand any major areas of opportunity. And because it's part of a unified talent management system, it helps you create a holistic approach and a holistic business strategy around engagement, and allows you to see the engagement information in relation to other data that you've got in the system. So before I move on to Rashmi and the demonstration, I do want to hear a little bit from you guys. So we're going to open up a survey. In the survey, we're going to ask you about how often you currently seek engagement from employees. So with the question that will have popped up on your screen, if you can answer that, submit your answer and then close the pop-up, that would be great. We're going to review the answers towards the end of the call. So after the demonstration, we'll come back and revisit what you answer here. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Rashmi and allow her to start her demonstration. And just while we're doing that, I'll give you a little bit of time in order to answer those questions and close that pop-up. Over to you, Rashmi.
All right. Thanks, Lisa. Thank you.
No problem.
And good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for making the time for this webinar today. Like Lisa mentioned, engagement, of course, has become a major area of concern that folks, particularly in HR, are actually looking at. And what I'm going to show you today is our tool or our platform and how it can actually help you run or understand engagement in your organization. Not just engagement, but a variety of surveys, a variety of feedback, and also how you look at that data and analyze that data at a later stage. What I have here is essentially a quick survey that an individual needs to complete. Now, when we push out a survey, there are really multiple ways that somebody can respond to it. There is a mobile app. As you can see over here, it's a very user-friendly, very simple kind of look and feel, so works very well on the mobile device or a handheld device as well. People could actually potentially take these surveys on the go through their handheld devices, or of course a full version over here, as you can see on the browser. Both options available. The idea really is, again, to make it very, very accessible, make it very, very simple for people to respond. Rather than have the tedium of, one email going out and people having to take a lot of time to complete it, is something that you can do on the go itself. Again, I'm just looking at numbers here. You also have the option to kind of request for qualitative input and design your own surveys in your own manner. Right. Just from a survey perspective, a couple of points that I did want to highlight. Of course, you have the complete flexibility to design your own surveys in terms of questions, in terms of rating scales, etc., etc. However, we also have a team of IS psychologists that are working on this subject and have years of experience and data kind of going into it. Therefore, the platform kind of comes equipped with a fair bit of questions already, which you can choose to leverage. They are based on our engagement model, which Lisa just told you about. So looking at satisfaction, looking at engagement, looking at commitment. So we have some of those preloaded content available to you. You could work off that, or you could, like I said, choose to build your own surveys and have your own content, right? What you see now in front of you is really the Engage dashboard, or the sum of data that which you would be able to see as an administrator or as an HR person or an HR business partner or a manager, whoever actually would want to look at data and see and try and make sense of this. A couple of things here. Of course, you can look at which particular campaign, or in other words, which particular survey you're looking at the data. You can have filters. Filters meaning, of course, if you want to slice and dice your data by division, by location, by tenure, by role, etc., etc. All of those filters are available, and you can actually kind of get more granular with your data. The idea, of course, being that you make it more actionable, right? At an aggregated level, there are a lot of things that tend to get covered up, which you may or may not be able to identify. When you go granular, you are able to kind of spot unique differences and unique areas of concern that different demographics are actually facing, and helps you give that, helps you analyze the data a lot better. But a word of caution there, when I say you can go granular, at the same time, it does not necessarily mean that you can actually go out there and track data by employee. One of the key focus points, or one of the things that really make an engagement survey successful or make it useful for you as HR, is that people believe that it's anonymous, which in this case it is. What I mean to say is that if there are less than 5 responses to a particular data cut, you will not have access to that data. The idea, of course, is to make it aggregated and anonymous, and therefore give your employees or the users the comfort that the feedback that they're sharing is not going to be used against them, right? With that, what you see, just a quick overview. Of course, this is the overall survey or the overall score, really. I'm looking at satisfaction. I could just as well look at engagement or commitment. I am seeing, again, a sort of trend emerging, which is, if I'm measuring it quarterly or annually or monthly, whichever way, but you can actually see a sort of trend emerging over here. What we see is there has been some sort of an increase in Q2, and we've kind of maintained that consistency across Q2, Q3, Q4. Again, while we are on division, so we can quickly see all of this information available to us by division as well. And, like I said, it could very well be position or location, depending on your requirements and how you want to see it. Moving downwards, we also have the driver details. When I say driver, so the overall engagement score is just a number, right? Drivers are factors that actually drive engagement, which means are actually impact engagement. So there are a lot of factors which could really move engagement up or down. The score that you see over here, so excuse me, the score that you see over here actually indicates a correlation with overall engagement of this particular driver. What I mean to say is that this score could actually vary from -100 to a +100. A +100, of course, indicates very strong correlation, which basically means that if I work on this driver, I have a very good chance of actually enhancing my overall engagement rate. So high correlation or strong positive correlation, which shows that engagement and driver scores are actually moving up in the same direction. Conversely, negative scores or very negative scores indicate that, if the driver score goes down, that's when engagement moves up. So they are more, moving in opposite direction. 0, of course, means that this particular driver has no impact whatsoever on engagement, right? A couple of ways that you can leverage this data. One is, obviously, you can pick out the strong drivers or the drivers that are demonstrating a strong correlation to overall engagement. gives you, again, actionable insights, right? Insights that you can do something about to actually drive up engagement in your organization. The other is from a design perspective, right? Over a period of time, as you are running these engagement surveys or as you are gathering this data and you're seeing these correlations emerge, you might realize that in your organization, some of these drivers are probably irrelevant. And they are, over a period of time, showing no correlation whatsoever, or very, very limited correlation. You could actually, it helps you kind of fine-tune your survey also as you go along. Also, the more details available here in terms of a breakup, while that score, it just gives you the correlation. This one gives you a complete sort of breakup in terms of, responding on this particular driver, how many people strongly agree to, this of course is a 5-point scale. You could choose to have a different sort of scale working for you. And also kind of see the trending as we go. So this is an 80 on 100 the first time in the previous quarter, and now we're at 68. So we might want to actually look at it over here and kind of investigate why that could be. The next level to the driver is really the questions or the individual item level details that you have over here. Again, questions, individual questions could be a rating question, which is of the sort that you saw in my survey that I was trying to complete at the beginning, or it could also be more qualitative questions where you're asking for comments, opinions, etc. And just to give you a sense of how those responses look like, while you'll of course see the more recent responses, but also kind of see a word cloud emerging over here, which gives you the overall theme. So I see empower and empowering and collaborative, even passionate, all of which is great stuff, but I also see hard, which I might want to kind of understand a little better to say where is this coming from or what it really means. Of course, like any word cloud, the big advantage that you have is that you don't really have to sift through piles and piles of qualitative input. You could get quick themes for you to work with literally at the click of a button. Right?
Okay, so let me just bring the screen back up. Perfect. So what we're going to do is we're going to revisit the poll. So I will shortly have the poll results displaying on the screen. Great. So as you can see, there is a high concentration of responses, both in the half-yearly category and also in the category where people are not currently capturing feedback on engagement initiatives, but that they're planning to. There is a lot of people did opt not to respond to the poll. So just for interest's sake, you might find or be interested in how that compares to one that we did earlier in the day that had a wider amount of feedback, in which case we had most people either responding to a poll doing a feedback on engagement survey either once a year or less often. It was 2/3 of respondents from quite a large number did it annually or less frequently than that. So slightly different result in the two polls we've run today. Perfect. So if you haven't done already, you have the option to actually close that pop-up that appeared. I'm going to move on to some questions, and I can see there have been some questions come through in the chat window. If you have a question and you haven't asked it yet, you have the ability to ask it at any point that suits. But I'm going to move on to the questions that were asked. So for you, Rashmi, if you want to provide your insight, the first question I have received is around benchmarking the data. So is it possible for people to benchmark the data against others as a result of their surveys?
Yes, you can. So we would be in a position to provide you benchmarks from an industry standpoint or from an employee side standpoint, etc. Again, similar rules around anonymity apply. So as long as there are about 3 to 5 organizations in your chosen sort of cut, we would be able to provide you with aggregated data. So that's something that's certainly in the works, and that's certainly something in the works, and you would have it.
Great. I know it's a question I get asked a lot with stuff like this, so it's good to hear. Okay, so the next question I have is around whether it's possible to have the survey questions show in different languages. Is that something that's possible in the system?
Yes, it's certainly possible to have translations, but as of now, our translations are more around 43 global languages. At this point in time, we wouldn't have any India-specific languages or the regional languages, but if you are representing an organization that has a global spread and you would want translations in languages like Spanish or Chinese, etc., we have about 43 of those. And again, any content that you might choose to load on your own for questions outside of the question bank provided by us, those also you could potentially translate and have them floated out.
Perfect, thank you. And that leads us quite nicely into another question around whether you can add your own questions. So you've already answered that to say that they can translate questions they've added in themselves. So obviously it's possible to do that.
Yes,
okay.
Yes, that's exactly it.
Cool. I can see a question in the chat window around the sample data size of the result that was displayed. I'm trying to think of how many it was. I don't have it in front of me, but we can see if we can find the answer to that. But in the meantime, the next question I can see is whether staff can go directly into a survey from an email without having to go through the process of logging into a system. Is that possible, Rashmi?
Yes, they could potentially, yes. I mean, you could provide a link in the email and they could log in directly as well.
Perfect, cool. I understand you've already mentioned mobile app and you can do it directly from being logged into the browser from a desktop as well, is that correct?
Yes. So notifications would, of course, go out through any of these channels, emails as well as the notifications on the app and on your action items in your browser version.
Okay, that's great. Okay, just give everyone a chance to ask any other last-minute questions they might have, and then I'll move on. So
I'll just address that query around the sample size that you were seeing in the demo. So this is of course a demo portal which we've kind of set up with some sort of dummy data. Doesn't actually represent a real client's or a real organization's data, but we did put together about 60 to 70 data points out there. I mean 60 to 70 respondents for the survey that you guys were seeing.
Cool, thank you for that, Rashmi. Okay, so I've got another question here around whether it's possible, after you do sort of a number of surveys over time, is it possible to see trends with past data in the results?
Sorry, Lisa, could you please, is it the question about can you make changes to the survey or?
No, it's just around trends. So someone's just added the question around over time as you've done, various surveys, is it possible to identify trends in the data?
Yes, that's certainly possible.
Perfect. Okay. Another question. It seems like everyone's adding me questions now. Perfect. Another question is around whether it's possible to connect employee engagement to individual goals. Do you have any thoughts on that one?
So from this webinar perspective, of course, what I've shown you right now is only the engagement tool that we have, which basically kind of just helps you measure employee engagement. We do have a unified talent suite also, which some of you might be aware of. As part of our unified talent management offering, we have a performance management tool. So in case you're using that and you want to kind of set up engagement data as a goal, that's something you can certainly do. And that is something that a lot of organizations actually kind of follow, have that as a goal for the managers. It's certainly possible, but like I said, you'll need to be measuring performance somewhere.
Yeah. Cool. Perfect. Thank you. So we are running out of time, so I'm going to move on to the key takeaways. But towards the end of the session, after the key takeaways, I'll also give you some information on where you can ask any further questions if we haven't got to your question so far. Okay. So to summarise the key takeaways from today's session, organisations nowadays are challenged with actually effectively engaging their workforce and driving their organisational culture. And part of that challenge is being able to measure and assess engagement and getting that employee feedback on a regular basis. And once you have that, actually having the data to understand the critical issues and to be able to create a timely action plan. The Cornerstone Engage tool enables you to create and schedule recurring continuous feedback campaigns to capture, analyse and take action on real-time employee feedback, to track the effectiveness of action plans over time, and also to drive culture and direct organisational growth. Okay, so what's left or what remains to be done is to thank you guys for taking time out of your busy days to join us for the Transform the Way Your Employees Engage with You webinar. We have recorded this webinar and we'll be sending out the link tomorrow to both the recording and the slides, so you'll have those available. If you'd like more information on Engage, you can contact your account representative or your client success manager if you're an existing Cornerstone client, or you can also request a call from our website. So that's cornerstoneondemand.com.au. Just so you're aware, the website link will be sent out in the email tomorrow, so if you didn't capture that, you'll have it handy once you receive the email. So I hope you enjoyed the session and you'll join us for future webinars, and hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much for your time.